It didn't feel dangerous at first. That's what I tell myself now, replaying the memory like a scene I missed the warning signs in. We were sitting close, but not close enough to look guilty. The kind of closeness you justify with excuses. There aren't enough chairs. It's loud in here. This is normal. The room was dim, lit by a single lamp that softened everything, even my thoughts. Outside, the city hummed faintly, distant enough to feel unreal. I remember noticing your hands before anything else. Not touching mine, just there, resting on your knee, relaxed, unaware of the way my attention kept drifting back to them. I hated that I noticed. And I hated that I didn't look away. I had a life waiting for me somewhere else. A relationship that looked complete from the outside, shared routines, familiar laughter, the comfort of predictability. Nothing was wrong enough to justify what I was feeling. And yet, sitting there with you, something quiet inside me kept leaning forward, like it wanted to hear more. We talked about nothing important. Work, small frustrations, things we pretended didn't matter. But underneath every word was something unsaid, something heavier. Our voices dropped without us agreeing to it. Silences stretched longer than they needed to. I noticed how you didn't rush to fill them. That should have been my sign. There was a moment, small, almost invisible, when I realized I was being more careful with my words than usual. Editing myself, choosing what to reveal and what to keep hidden. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted you to stay. Why do I care if you stay? The question came quietly, unwelcome. I told myself it was harmless. That everyone needs someone who listens. That connection doesn't always mean intention. But my body was already betraying me, leaning in when you spoke, holding my breath during pauses, feeling a strange warmth settle where certainty used to be. You laughed at something I said, and for a second, your eyes held mine just a little too long. Not accidental. Not rushed, just long enough for something to pass between us, unlabeled, but understood. My heart picked up, not with excitement, with recognition. I thought about the person I was supposed to be loyal to. Their face surfaced in my mind, soft and familiar. And guilt flickered, brief, like a match struck in the dark. It didn't burn long. That scared me more than anything. Because I didn't move away. I didn't change the subject. I didn't stand up and say I should go. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was. Listening, wanting, pretending that the space between us wasn't already shrinking. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that this was the last safe moment, the last point where nothing had technically gone wrong. I could still leave with clean hands and a clear conscience. But even then, before a single boundary was crossed, I knew the truth I wasn't ready to admit. The line wasn't ahead of us. It was already beneath our feet. I don't remember who spoke first after the silence settled in. Only that when it broke, it felt heavier than before, like something fragile had finally cracked. You shifted closer, not enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel your presence without looking. The air between us changed. Thicker, warmer. Every breath felt deliberate now, like we were both suddenly aware of how loud breathing could be. I don't usually talk like this, you said quietly. Neither did I, but I nodded anyway. You talked about feeling unseen. About being surrounded by people and still feeling alone. Your words weren't dramatic or rehearsed. They came out uneven, honest in a way that made my chest tighten. I recognized the feeling too well. I lived in it. I just never said it out loud. I thought it was just me, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. That was it, the first real confession. Not romantic, not explicit, just intimate. The kind that opens a door you can't pretend you didn't see. You looked at me then. Really looked at me, and for a second, I felt exposed, like you could see every thought I'd been hiding behind polite smiles and safe conversations. I should have pulled back. Instead, I leaned into the feeling, into the relief of being understood. You're already too deep, I said, half smiling, trying to make it sound like a joke. But it wasn't. The words hung between us, stripped of humor the moment they landed. Your expression changed, not surprised, not offended. Something else. Acceptance, maybe, or recognition, as if you'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud. Maybe, You replied. One word. Soft. Certain. My heart started racing then, not from fear, but from the sudden clarity of what was happening. We weren't drifting anymore. We were choosing, slowly, silently, but choosing all the same. Our knees brushed. Just barely. An accident, anyone could say. But neither of us moved away. That tiny point of contact sent a shock through me, sharp enough to make my breath hitch. I focused on the sound of the room, the distant traffic, the hum of electricity, anything but the fact that my body was already reacting before my mind caught up. I thought of the life I had promised myself I wouldn't jeopardize. The rules I believed I lived by. They felt distant now, abstract, like principles that belonged to someone else. I told myself this wasn't betrayal. Not yet. But my thoughts were already crossing lines my body hadn't. Wondering what it would feel like to be closer. Wondering how your voice would sound if it dropped any lower. Wondering why this felt so easy when it should have felt wrong. You shifted again, close enough now that I could smell you, clean, familiar in a way that didn't make sense. I realized with a slow, sinking certainty that whatever line I thought existed between us had already blurred beyond recognition. You weren't pulling me in. I was stepping forward, and the most dangerous part, I didn't want you to stop. There was a moment, quiet, fragile, where I could have stopped everything by saying nothing at all. Silence would have been the safer choice. Silence would have been loyal. But instead, I spoke. I don't feel like this with anyone else, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The words surprised me as much as they surprised you. I hadn't planned to say them. They rose up from somewhere honest and reckless, bypassing the part of me that knew better. As soon as they were out in the open, they felt irreversible, like stepping past a door that had already closed behind me. You didn't answer right away. You didn't have to. The way your shoulders softened, the way your breath slowed, it told me everything. I felt it then, the shift. The exact second when this stopped being something that happened to us and became something we were actively creating. I should have taken your silence as a chance to pull back. Instead, I filled it. I told you how invisible I sometimes felt in my own life. How conversations at home had turned into habits instead of connections. How I missed being asked questions that didn't have predictable answers. Each sentence stripped away another layer of distance, another excuse. With every word, the weight in my chest grew heavier, not with regret, but with awareness. I knew what I was doing. And still, I continued. You finally spoke, your voice lower now. I didn't mean for this to happen. I nodded, even though we both knew it wasn't true anymore. Maybe it hadn't started with intention, but it was continuing with it. That was the part we weren't saying out loud. Our arms brushed. This time, it wasn't accidental. The contact was brief, almost polite, but it lingered long after it ended. I felt it everywhere, an echo that made my thoughts stumble. This is wrong, I said. But my tone didn't match the words. You looked at me, searching my face for something, permission, maybe. Or denial. What you found instead was honesty I hadn't meant to reveal. Because when I met your eyes, I didn't see fear. I saw want. And that's when I crossed the final line, not with touch, not with action, but with choice. I don't want you to stop, I admitted. The room felt smaller after that, like the walls had leaned in to listen. My heart pounded, loud enough that I wondered if you could hear it. Every rule I'd ever believed in felt suddenly negotiable, distant compared to the immediacy of this moment. I told myself I was just being honest. That honesty couldn't be wrong. But deep down, I knew the truth I didn't want to face. Words could betray just as deeply as bodies ever could. And I had said far more than I should have. Not because I was confused. But because I wanted you to know. By the time I finally stopped talking, there was nothing left unsaid between us. Only the consequences, waiting quietly for their turn to speak. Light slipped through the curtains in thin, careless lines, illuminating a room that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Everything looked the same, yet nothing did. The silence was different now, no longer charged, no longer intimate. Just empty. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word I'd said the night before. Not the pauses, not the near touches, the words, because those were the things I couldn't take back. They lingered, heavier in daylight, stripped of the warmth that had made them feel harmless. My phone rested nearby, dark and still. No messages, no proof, and yet, I felt exposed, like I was carrying something visible on my skin. A secret that hadn't been discovered, but had already changed me. When I got up, routine took over. Shower, coffee, familiar motions that belonged to the life I was supposed to return to. The life where nothing had happened. I moved through it carefully, like someone trying not to spill something fragile they were pretending not to hold. The person I was committed to spoke to me the way they always did, casual, trusting. Their voice wrapped around me with a comfort I used to lean into without thinking. Now, it felt heavier, earned, deserved in a way I suddenly wasn't sure I was. I wondered if guilt was supposed to feel louder than this. Because beneath it, quiet but persistent, was longing. Not for what we did. For what we almost did. For the version of myself that felt seen without having to explain. I caught myself rereading old messages, not from you, but from before. From a time when I still believed clarity was something you either had or didn't. Now I knew better. Clarity could arrive late, dressed as regret. I thought about reaching out. About checking if you felt this strange, unsettled pull too. But I didn't. Not because I was strong, but because I was afraid of what one more sentence might undo. We never talked about it again. No closure, no agreement, just a quiet understanding that lived in the spaces we avoided. Maybe that was the punishment. Or maybe it was the mercy. Some nights, I still think about that moment, the last safe one I didn't take. I wonder who I would be if I had chosen silence instead. If loyalty would have felt easier than restraint. Nothing was exposed. Nothing was confessed. Nothing officially ended. And yet, something had shifted permanently. Because once you say the words you're not supposed to say. Once you let someone see the part of you that was meant for someone else. You don't go back to who you were before. You just learn how to live. With what you didn't say out loud afterward. And what you might still be tempted to say again.